internet. Today I am here to do my April and May wrap up because I just apparently quit making videos during the month of May and most of April. So I got some catching up to do. During the month of April I read 7 books and I also participated in the Magical Owls readathon, and in May I read 6 books. So since I've got quite a bit to talk about, let's just jump right into it. Full disclosure, since it's been a while since I've read some of these books, I may not have a whole lot to say about some of them, so get over it. The first book I read during the month of April was The Storied Life of A.J. Vickery by Gabrielle Zevin. This is one I actually started right at the end of March and finished a couple of days into April. I went into this book not knowing a whole lot about it other than the fact that it had a bookstore setting, which intrigued me enough as it was. This is like an adult fiction story about A.J. Vickery, who owns a bookstore on a really small island, and it was an absolute delight. I laughed, I cried, both of those literally. I adored all of the characters. I really liked the writing style as well, and I just thought the overall story was very, very charming. If you are a book lover, you would probably really appreciate this book because since A.J. Vickery is a bookstore owner, there's a lot of conversations just about the joy of books from a lot of the different characters. And I ended up giving this 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I finished during the month of April was an audiobook, and that book was The Last Battle, which is the very final Chronicles of Narnia book by C.S. Lewis. It has taken me a really long time to finally read all of these books. I read the majority of them as a kid, but The Last Battle was one of the few that I never read, so I can finally say I've read this entire series. And I really enjoyed it. I was pleasantly surprised by it, to be honest. It was really nice seeing a lot of familiar faces, and the story was definitely interesting. I thought it was a nice way to end the series for the most part. The very, very ending, I still don't know how I feel about. That's a conversation for another time. But for the most part, I really enjoyed this one, and I give it 4 out of 5 stars. I also thought the narrator did a really good job. After those 2 books, all of the rest of the books I read in April were for the Owls readathon. I talked about what class they were for in my April TBR, and it's been a while, so if you really want to know, go watch that. But the first book I read was What If It's Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera. This is a YA contemporary following 2 points of view from Arthur and Ben. It starts off with kind of like a meet cute setting. I'm not going to go too much into it, but I really, really loved the beginning. And I think it had a really, really strong beginning, but the first part of this book did drag a little bit. It took a little too long for the 2 of them to find each other again. It was cute, but I kept finding myself going, okay, come on, let's get with the program. I really, really liked the characters. Overall, I really, really enjoyed the story as well, and I really liked the ending. I will say, I feel like Becky and Adam's writing styles are very similar in this book, so sometimes I did forget whose point of view I was reading from. But overall, I really, really enjoyed this. It was a very happy book, and I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read is The Traitor Prince by C.J. Redwine. This is the 3rd book in a series of kind of companion retellings. Each book in this series is set in the same world, but it's a different retelling. And it has completely separate characters each time. So you can kind of read them in whatever order you want. But this one is a retelling of The Prince and the Pauper. One thing I really, really like about this series overall is how, creepy and gritty and gruesome these get. And this one definitely stayed in that theme. I think out of all of the books so far I've read in this series, which I've read all of them except the most recent one, this one's probably my least favorite, but I still really liked it. I listened to it on audio, and the narrator did a really great job as well. The world is very, very unique in this one, which was kind of fun to read about. And we had a couple of nods to some of the previous books. Nothing spoilery, but still fun. And I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars as well. The next book I finished is The Color Purple by Alice Walker. This is basically a classic. This is a historical fiction novel about 2 sisters named Celie and Nettie and their struggles. Nettie is a missionary to Africa, but the majority of this book takes place from Celie's perspective. He's basically been given away to marry some asshole and take care of his kids. It's a really, really difficult book to read. There's a lot of sexual assault and abuse in this book, but I really, really liked it. I can't believe it's taken me this long to read this book, but I'm really glad that I finally did. The writing style for this book is absolutely brilliant. Alice Walker really took the time to write the book in a way where you can kind of see like how Celie's thoughts would actually be going. Celie is not a very educated woman, and so that's reflected in the writing style, and I feel like the further in you go and the more that Celie learns, it changes with her, and I thought that was so cool. This also is a queer book because Celie is queer. But yeah, I really, really love this book. I gave it 5 stars. I'm glad I finally got around to reading it. The next book I actually don't have anymore, but that is The Rest of Us Just Live Here by Patrick Ness. This is kind of a YA science fiction / contemporary novel, and the idea behind it is that it's from the point of view of all of the other people in the Chosen One's story. I thought there was a lot of really good representation in here. The anxiety rep was really great, the OCD rep was really great, and seeing the Chosen One trope kind of from an outside perspective was very interesting, but it did kind of let me down. I've heard for years people talking about how great this book is, and it was just okay for me, so that was kind of a disappointment. It was just fine. I gave it 3.5 stars still, but it was just okay. And the last book I read in the month of April was The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. This is a YA contemporary about a girl named Natasha and a boy named Daniel, and it takes place all in one day because Natasha is about to be deported with her family. I've heard really great things about this book ever since it came out a couple of years ago. It's been made into a movie that I haven't gotten to see yet, and I really want to. But I definitely get why so many people love this book. It deals with a lot of important topics, and Nicola Yoon, her writing style is just so pretty, and I think she did such a great job. You also get multiple point of views. Of course, you get Natasha and Daniel's point of view, but you will also get like a page or two from like random people on the street or other people that Natasha and Daniel interact with at some point. And I really liked how that was woven into the story. The romance itself was a little tropey because, you know, it takes place in one day and they just met that day and everything. But pushing that aside, I really enjoyed this book and I gave it 4 stars. So now we're done with April and let's jump on over into May. The very first book I read in the month of May was a reread, and that was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I felt like I remembered a lot from this, but I actually forgot quite a bit, so I'm really glad I decided to reread it before continuing on. But this book is a YA fantasy about a human girl named Jude who's basically grown up in the world of fairy after her parents are killed by her sister's father, who's a fairy, and he whisks Jude and her twin sister off back to the world of fairy to raise them. I would be surprised if you haven't read this book yet, or at least heard of it, because it kind of took the world by storm a bit, and it's really good. Holly Black is really good at writing this world and has created a very interesting, creepy, and great story. I did forget a lot, like I said. I'm really glad I reread it, and I actually decided to raise my rating of this to 4.5 stars because I think I enjoyed the reread more than I did the first time. The next thing I read was actually a short story because I had to go get some work done on my car and I forgot to bring my book. So I downloaded an ebook of Evidence of the Affair by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I read the entire thing while I was waiting for my car to get done. This is, like I said, it's a short story. I think it's only available on Amazon, but it's letters back and forth between this woman and this man whose spouses are cheating on them with each other, and so the two of them are kind of writing about how they feel about the fact that their spouses are seeing each other, and they kind of start to fall for each other as well. I didn't really know anything about this book going in, and this isn't something that I feel like I would normally read if I knew the premise, but Taylor Jenkins Reid is just like a writing wizard, and she could write about anything and I'll be super invested in it, and that's exactly what happened. I had so many feelings as I was reading it. I don't know how she does it, but she always manages to suck me in, and I ended up giving this 4.5 stars. It was a delightful surprise. The next book I read is The Mighty Heart of Sunny St. James by Ashley Herring Blake. This is her newest middle grade book about Sunny St. James, who is a 12-year-old girl who recently just got a heart transplant, and so she's trying to figure out who she wants to be now that she has this new organ in her body. Sunny ends up becoming friends with a girl named Quinn, and Sunny gets this idea in her head that she wants to make it a goal of hers to find a boy and kiss him because she's never been kissed. And Sunny finds that she may actually start having feelings for Quinn instead. This book was absolutely fucking adorable. I loved it. I adored Sunny and Quinn and all of the characters, really. Sunny's had a really tough time of it so far, but I really loved her attitude and just her outlook on life and everything. She was such a great character. Another big point of this book is that Sunny is not raised by her mother, but was raised by her mother's best friend. And I really loved the relationship she had with Kate. Really just everything was great. I saw a lot of my younger self in Sunny, which was very refreshing, and while I wish I would have had a book like this when I was younger, I'm glad that it exists now, and I slapped 5 stars on this book so quickly because it absolutely deserved it. Next is a book I've been waiting to read for so long, and I finally got to do it, and that is Becoming by Michelle Obama. This is Michelle's memoir, and I really wanted to listen to the audiobook because Michelle narrates it herself, and I'm so glad that I waited for it because she is like the best audiobook narrator. She has the most calming voice, and just there's something different whenever you read nonfiction, I think, about hearing the author tell their own story, which is why I waited so long. It took me like 4 months to get this on audio from the library, but it was absolutely worth the wait. I really didn't know a whole lot about Michelle, to be honest, but I really enjoyed her story, and she is such an inspiring person, and this book left me feeling really inspired too. It was honestly just, it was a great time. I'm so glad I read this book, and I gave it 5 stars as well. The next book I read is one that I had been meaning to read basically all year. I finally got to it, and that is The Wicked King by Holly Black. The reason I reread The Cruel Prince. I'm gonna be totally honest and upfront. This book took me like 3 weeks to read, and it's not very long. This book wasn't bad, per se. I just wasn't as gripped by the story as I was when I read The Cruel Prince, which I wasn't expecting. And I don't know if that was because I was starting to kind of get in a slump, or if it was the book. I really don't know, but I still really liked it. And oh gosh, the ending blew my mind. There are a couple of cliffhangers that Holly Black leaves, and one of them I kind of saw coming, but the other one I definitely didn't, and I'm shook. I'm fucking shook. Like I said, I was not as into this one as the first book, but I seem to be in the minority on that. For the most book, people like freaked out about this book. But I am really glad that Queen of Nothing is coming out sooner than it was because I need to know what happens. Ended up giving The Wicked King 4 stars. And the final book I read in the month of May was another reread, and that was Warcross by Marie Lu. I decided I wanted to read Wildcard and that I really didn't remember anything about Warcross. So I thought it might be worth a reread, and I'm really glad I did because it turns out I did forget a lot of this book. This book is about a girl named Amika Chen who kind of gets swept up in the virtual reality of Warcross. I read this not long after it came out. Really liked it. I really enjoyed the reread as well. The story is so interesting, and the world of Warcross is so interesting to read about, and I really like Amika Chen as her main character as well. My feelings are still the same as far as the romance goes in this book. I'm a bit iffy on it, but I'm really glad I decided to give this a reread, and the audiobook narrator was okay. A little irritating at times, but okay. Still worth a listen. And I ended up sticking with my rating of 4.5 stars for this one. So that is my April and May wrap up. I'm so glad I finally got around to filming that. Let me know down in the comments your favorite book that you've read the past couple of months, and I will see you guys next time with another video, and on time. Bye.